أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية أمير المؤمنين والأئمة المعصومين عليهم السلام والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود فطر الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووتد بالصخور ميدان أرضه ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآل محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من يوم عداوتهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الحكيم وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I begin in the name of Allah, the most kind, the most merciful. It's due to that kindness and mercy that He gives us these opportunities where we gather in remembrance and in glorification of Him, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Then I begin this sermon the way the commander of the faithful, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhima afdalu salatu wassalam. Would begin many of his sermons by advising us, Usikum ibadallah bitaqwallah, that I advise you, O the servants of God, to be God conscious, God fearing and pious human beings. Due to this being Good Friday, I felt rather than continuing with the same theme that we have been continuing, we'll pause it for 1 week inshallah and then continue it next week if God gives us that opportunity. And we'll talk about some other relevant issues that are happening within our society and of that nature. This Good Friday is an opportunity for us really to spend some time in reflection and in reverence of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, the way our Christian brothers and sisters are currently doing so within their own gatherings. And this Good Friday is special for us because it coincides with the wiladat of Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And inshallah in tonight's lecture, for those who will attend here, we're going to be looking at some very beautiful traditions that describe the similarities and differences between Ali and Nabi Isa alayhim salam, to really give us an understanding of the position of imamat within our faith and belief. But before we get there tonight, I wanted to share one hadith in this light. The hadith is reported from Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. He says, "Lamma qadima Ali alayhi salam ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, Allahumma salli ala bi fath Khaybar." He says that when Ali alayhi salam approached the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, during the opening or the conquest of Khaybar, قال له رسول الله لولا أن تقول فيك طوائف من أمتي ما قالت النصارى للمسيح عيسى ابن مريم. He says, "O Ali, if it were not for the fact that there would be groups from my ummah who would describe you and say about you what the Nasara say about Isa ibn Maryam, لَقُلْتَ فِيكَ الْيَوْمَ, I would say that about you today. لَا تَمُرُّ بِمَلَئٍ إِلَّا أَخَذُوا التُّرَابُ مِنْ تَحْتِ رِجْلَيْكَ. Yeah, he says you would not pass by a group of people except that they would pick up the dirt from which underneath you walked in and use it as a form of shafa'ah to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, this is Ali. Yeah, this is the martaba of Ali ibn Abi Talib, where the Prophet says that if I were to describe you the way I know you to be described, people would take you to be a god, O Ali. Yeah, the hadith is long, but that just gets us to reflect, right? That if that is the position of Ali, imagine the position of Rasulullah. Yeah, that if the Prophet can't describe him, then who can really describe the position of Rasulullah? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I want to talk about very briefly in this first sermon the wonderful opportunity that we had 2 weeks ago when we went for ziyarat with 31 of our madrasa kids, and we had a chance to meet Sayyid Sistani, hafidhahullah. And we had an opportunity to sit down with him, and he addressed some things that I thought it would be wise to inform the community about his advice to us that I'm sure would be relevant for each and every one of us. It's a wonderful opportunity, right, for our children to go on ziyarat, first of all, and to experience ziyarat with their peers and with those who have similar mindsets and similar thought processes. This I generation that we talked about a few weeks ago, to have just them in one gathering, it's always inspiring for me that when I come back from these type of trips, to know that these are our future generations, that these are our future. Oftentimes we look at our kids today and with that one time we used to wear baggy pants, now they wear tight pants. I don't know why, but that's the fashion now of these skinny jeans and skinny pants that they wear, and with their hairstyles and with their gadgets and all of these things. But when you put them in that environment, these kids are remarkable. Yeah, really remarkable. Like a lot of praise goes to the parents, the community, the madrasa, and all of these different institutions that are there that are preparing these kids that, when it comes down to it, they're willing to let go of all of these different things. We didn't have internet in one of the hotels that was working well. For I think a couple hours the kids complained, but after that, they got over it. They realized Imam Hussein was right there. They didn't need internet, so they were busy with that type of spiritual engagement. And one of their highlights was no doubt visiting Sayyid Sistani. We had this opportunity to sit there with him, with just about 38 of us, including the chaperones. And I just want to talk about what he said, and I'll add a little bit of my tafsir in there as well, inshallah. First of all, he welcomed all of us and prayed that our ziyarat be accepted. And he then mentioned something. He then mentioned that he prays for all people. He says not just Muslims, but I pray for all people every day, and for Muslims in particular and believers in particular, I pray twice a day, before sunrise and before sunset. And that in itself, even our children said it was remarkable that he would mention the fact that he would pray for others. Oftentimes we're so busy worried about our own nature and our own backyard that we forget that we're all a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah? And we all don't want anyone to be suffering in any way. Rather, we want for my neighbors and my brothers and sisters who are not Muslim the same security and safety that I want for my family and my community. And so he specifically mentioned that I pray for all the people and in believers in particular twice a day. And then he specified what he prays for the believers. He said, I pray for them to have good health, for their increase in sustenance, and then he said for their increase in knowledge. And then this is where he went into a lengthy discussion about the importance of knowledge in Islam. He didn't specify here, it wasn't a general type of knowledge. He later talked about a general type of knowledge, but here he was talking about more specific knowledge when it comes to Islam in particular, right? He says that we have to raise generations who are strong in their aqeedah, who are strong in their fundamental beliefs. The reason being, he says, we live in environments now, we live in times now where the external pressures can change the way that we believe and the way that we practice, right? And we notice that, like today, sadly, there are so many isms that are attached to Islam. Whether you are as feminism, whether it's liberalism, whether it is conservatism, like we add these hyphenations to Islam, and that's because the society teaches us that it's okay to be a hyphenated person, right? But it says in Islam there is no such thing. It says you are a Muslim, you are a believer, and whatever is happening externally shouldn't influence who you are as an individual. It says, and the way we remain steadfast in that is through the increase in knowledge about why we do what we do. In other words, he was saying that when we would study our religion, we would find that within it are all the answers we need, and we don't need external answers. He went into a couple of very interesting examples. He went into this a few minute long example of Gandhi. He says, I read the biography of Gandhi, and these type of things from like a marja surprise you. You're like, oh really? I haven't read the description of Gandhi. But he said, even when Gandhi went out and he traveled back to India, he says Gandhi would advise his people to be careful when you travel abroad. He says, because it's very easy to have your own faith be tangled up and you come out somebody different altogether. So he says when you guys live in the West, you have to be extra careful that you have studied your religion, you have understood it, and you need to be confident, he says, in the fact that your religion has all the answers. And then he gave the example of the Jews. He says whatever we say about the Jews, he says one thing about the Jews is that a Jew will always remain a Jew. He will never die not a Jew. Why? Because they are raised believing that within their religion is all the answers. And he says you'll take a look at a person like Einstein, and then he says how he read the biography of Einstein, and he says that Einstein, even to the latter parts of his life when he had accomplished so much, and when he moved to Germany, he says there even he died a Jew because he believed that his knowledge simply strengthened his faith. It did not contradict his faith. And he said we as Muslims need to take this approach, where we need to firmly believe that within our religion are all the answers. And then he said that this belief starts from the time that we are children. He says it goes back to how we parent at home. And then he spent quite a few minutes talking about the importance of raising our children to see the beauty of our faith. He says, you take an example, that the way we practice our religion at home needs to not just be from the perspective of words, but it needs to be from action. So he says you take a simple example, like a mother at home wearing black during a wafat. I don't know how many of us do that, right? Like wafats come and go because we're busy outside. We wear regular clothes, but he says if a mother just were to wear black on the day of a wafat, for example, or shed a tear because of that, and the child sees that, they would ask their mother, why are you crying, mama? Right? Or why are you wearing black? And the fact that she would say, today our 9th Imam was killed. He said that would leave a permanent mark in that child, to show them the beauty of our faith, right? And I think, and then he gave another example as well. He says, if you have a 6 or a 7-year-old child at home and the parents are praying, just once a week, he said, tell your child, Baba, come and pray with me, right? And he specifically mentioned don't overdo it, because you don't want to make religion thaqeel on the children. You don't want to make religion heavy on the children. So he said no more than once a week. Call your child to pray with you when they are young, just so that they get an appreciation of what you do. When we take this about the importance of raising children, we as a community have decided to be parents to children as well. It may not be my direct children, but the children of this community are my children. And this is the responsibility that all of us as adults have taken. And we need to take a similar approach when it comes to how we treat our children within our community. I have said this from a very long time ago, that our focus is on the youth, right? But by the time we start focusing on the youth, it's too late. It's too late. We need to target children when they are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because that's where we create a foundation. When we're going to go chase 18-year-olds to come to mosque, when we didn't put any seeds of love of the mosque when they were children, they will not come to mosque. right? So this is the way we need to refocus, and I believe the madrasa does an excellent job of this, but the responsibility is for all of us to make our wiladats fun, to make our wafats different, so that our children find an appreciation for this religion. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He then talked about, today is Good Friday, I'm going to make it good. Yeah, I'm going to take my time. He then talked about how believers, so he said then, second point, he said, and then he talked about how believers should want the best for other believers. This is something he said many times in the past that we visited. And he quoted a hadith in which our Aimma alayhimus salam say that a believer has 40 rights against another believer. That means you have 40 rights on me and I have 40 rights on you. And he says one of the rights that we have is the purification. We want for you what I want for myself, right? What I want you to be successful the way I want my family to be successful. And he said that one of these rights is the purification, right? And to see the best version of ourselves within each other. So we help each other to become the best version of ourselves that is possible. And he says one of the ways we can do that, and again, he went back to our children. He says one of the ways we do that is that once a year, he says, whether it's an Islamic school or whether it's a madrasa or anything like that, once a year, he says, the Islamic schools need to select the most academically brilliant students within that school. Yeah? And then he says you need to have a special gathering just to honor these brilliant students who succeeded academically. He said don't just do it, for example, we do an assembly and we honor students. He said no, invite the whole community, right? And let them see these brilliant students that are there within that community. And then he says that you must give them a gift, a hadiyah. He says it may be something inconsequential to them, right? But he says the fact that when you give them this gift, it will make them feel honored for what they have done. But he says, why are we doing this? He says the only reason we do this is to inspire other kids next year to strive for academic brilliance. Yeah? When they see other kids being honored, he said, they will want to become honored themselves. And he says there's nothing wrong if that's the ambition. Even if the ambition is to get that gift that that student got, he says what we are driving forward for is academic excellence within our communities. He says, what I would like to see at the end of the day is that every profession, at the head of that profession should be a Muslim and a believer standing on top of it. Yeah? He says, if you want a doctor, he said, I want us to be the best doctors. You want an engineer, I want us to be the best engineer. You want a dentist, I want us to be the best dentist. He's like, we hold basically, right, that amazing seerah of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and the result of that should be for us to be the best at everything. But he says that we start off from the time that we are children, putting the seed in to encourage academic excellence. And he says that, but I caution you, right? As if he knows our politics, you know. He says, I caution you. And he says, don't pick the kids that are, for example, the principal's son. Yeah? Or don't pick my son. Or don't pick your. He said, you have to be fair in who you pick to be honored. Yeah? He says you have to pick those who are academically excellent, whether they are the farmer's son or the principal's son, it doesn't matter. Those who are most brilliant. And then alhamdulillah, he left us with that, but I think one of the coolest moments for me, to be quite honest, is that when he talked, we're not allowed to go with much, so we weren't allowed to take a pen or a pencil. We had to kind of memorize what he said, and then I was translating. And then he kind of leaned forward and he says, I'm sorry I spoke so much today. Yeah, that was like one of the coolest things, you know. For him, I told him we could sit here for an hour and listen to you, Sayyidina. Yeah, we benefit from you a lot. But he was very humble in his way that he acts. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives him a long life, inshaAllah, that He gives him good health, that He continues to guide us until the coming of Sahib al-Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. Allah, salli ala محمد وآل محمد ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم والحمد لله رب العالمين أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
صل على
محمد وعلى محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والحمد لله قاسم الجبارين، مبير الظالمين، مدرك الهاربين، نكال الظالمين، صريخ المستصرخين، موضع حاجات الطالبين، معتمد المؤمنين. اللهم صل على خاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، وصل على سيد الوصيين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. محمد وآل محمد، وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، وصل على سبتي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة القائم المهدي. على محمد وآل محمد صلاة لا غاية لعددها ولا نهاية لمددها ولا نفاد لأمدها. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات، وتابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. This past Monday, March 26th, there was a meeting that we had as part of the Muslim Advisory Committee. Every few months we have a meeting with the Peel Regional Police Department. And on Monday, March 26th, this past Monday, we had a meeting of the Muslim Advisory Council. And though there was about 8 of us in attendance in that meeting from different mosques within Peel, and in attendance was the Chief of Police, Jennifer Evans, Superintendent Manny Rodriguez, Inspector Wahid Butt, Detective Firas Ismail, and Constable Cameron Walker. So there was about 5 or 6 of the police department along with the Muslim Advisory Committee. And there were many things discussed. I think first of all, it's really important for us to appreciate that the Peel Regional Police even has these type of meetings of the community. They don't have to, but they've created special advisory committees. They have a black advisory community, a Sikh advisory committee, and there's I think a youth advisory committee, but they also have a Muslim advisory committee where we have an open access to the Chief of Police to address the issues that we face within our communities. And there were many things that were discussed, and I just want to give you a little bit of a summary as I do every so often. One of the things that we discussed was the rise of domestic violence in Peel. The chief said that every year domestic violence rises by about 5%. Yeah? And again, these are only the reported cases of domestic violence. He said if domestic violence cases are rising by 5%, then we can imagine that actually what's happening on the ground is much greater. And what was echoed by the different imams that were there and the different heads of mosques that were there was that we as the Muslim community are not immune from this, right? That within our community as well, there is a tremendous rise, or I don't even say rise, it's always been pretty high, to be quite honest, of incidences of domestic violence. And it's very sad, right? In fact, there's a shelter here called the Honey Church Shelter in Brampton. One of the mosques there who is part of this committee. They send food once a week to that shelter. And there are many beds in that shelter, but over 50 beds are filled by Muslim women who have left their house because of domestic violence. This is just one shelter in Brampton, right? I don't want to spend too much time talking about domestic violence today. I have promised in the past, and I will, inshallah, spend numerous sermons talking about domestic violence, because I see the cases all the time, and every other religious leader as well sees cases of this. And again, it's not a Muslim problem. We see the chief has said that when she talked about a 5% rise in domestic violence, she wasn't targeting or addressing us. She's talking about generally in Peel. But this is something that needs to be discussed, because it's a very difficult position, to be quite honest, right? We get cases all the time where women are being abused at home, but they don't want the police to get involved. And now that becomes very tricky, right? As a first approach, that when a lady comes to me and tells me that my husband abuses me, my first reaction is call the police on him. Yeah, I don't have sympathy for that. I said call the police on him, but they're hesitant, right? They're hesitant for numerous factors. One is the stigma within the community. Two is they worry who will pay the bills then, right? If my husband goes to jail, who's going to look after us as a family after that? And third, they fear the repercussions when he comes back from jail, right? And so they deal with it, right? And it's something that in certain cultures is almost like one of the imams was telling us, it's really mind-boggling, right? That he was counseling a couple and all of a sudden she started crying and she says, he hits me. And he was like, yeah, I hit her. Like it wasn't a big deal, right? And he was saying, what do you mean you hit her, right? Like how can it be culturally accepted for this practice to take place? But anyways, we're going to spend some time on this subject because it's that important, right? If our children see us abusing our parents or abusing our spouses, they're going to grow up as being abusers as well. And there's going to be a perpetual cycle of this within our communities. Another point that was discussed within the advisory council was the panhandlers who come outside of our mosques, right? Those who come and beg for money. This is not just an epidemic at our mosque, right? Every mosque has this issue and it's greatly disturbing for many. And the police actually told us that it's not just mosques. These same people will then go to churches on Sunday and stand outside and beg for money from those type of places. The sad part is they're wearing hijab, you know, so it gives off a very negative message about Islam. The police, regarding this issue, they said really we can't do much about this, right? The only thing we can do is if, for example, we call the police and then they escort them out for trespassing. He says, but a lot of times what they'll do is they'll stand on the sidewalk and therefore they're no longer trespassing, right? So he says they'll just maneuver somewhere else. And so the chief of police just suggested one thing and she said, stop giving to them. Yeah? If they see that no one is giving to them, they will stop coming, right? But as long as now we're sensitive, right? We're coming to Jummah, we want God's barakah, and then we're saying no to somebody outside begging for money, right? This is the same issue we have in Iraq when we go there for ziyarat and all these different kids come to beg for money. People are very confused about what the etiquette and what the protocol is. But these same people who are outside here are a gang, they're a group, yeah? They'll get picked up at the end by a nice fancy car. One of the imams actually saw the panhandlers that were there at his mosque get picked up in an Escalade. Yeah. So he says, look, they are a gang. He says, we've invited them to come to mosque, yeah, and said that come, at least pray. They don't even come and pray inside, and we'll give you whatever you want, but they're refusing because they make good money standing outside there. So, you know, one of the ways, honestly, like if we don't want this headache to be there and the guilt to be there, one of the only ways really we have is to stop giving. Now it's up to us if we want to do that. If not, then we shouldn't be mad that they're out here. We're feeding the habit, basically, right? And then we spoke at great length about the disturbance caused by Sandra Solomon. This is the lady who entered 2 mosques last weekend. It's been all over the news and I'm sure you've heard about it. She entered Sayyidah Khadija Center, which is basically around the corner from here, and Darut Tawheed, ripping pages of a Quran and handing out flyers promoting Islamophobic rhetoric. Now, one of the things that this lady did was I don't want to say smart, but she assured that she wouldn't get in trouble, is that she brought her own Quran. She didn't grab a Quran from the mosque and rip it, because if she did that, that would be vandalism, right? So the fact that she just brought her own copy of the Quran means she's kind of thought this process out. And that's why the police reassured us. They said, look, we are taking this very seriously. However, the most that there's possible that we can charge her for is mischief, right? Because she loitered, she trespassed, and she left flyers on cars where we didn't want. He said, though we may try to include a mischief with a hate bias label to it, but he says we're still under investigation on it. But what they did want us to communicate to our community is that they want us to know that the police are aware of what's happening, that they're not naive about it, and they're heavily investigating what's happening, and that we need to take certain measures to ensure that we deal with such events properly, right? It's very emotional when we see someone ripping pages of the Quran, right? But when we respond back emotionally, we're just adding fuel to the fire. We're not stopping the problem, right? And so some of the things that they asked us to do right away is, the first thing is they said, call 911 right away. Whether she comes to your mosque or anyone else is trespassing, call 911. And she gave a really good example, the chief of police. She said, look, when she came to say the Khadija Center, they said, we didn't know about it until the next day, 24 hours later. He says, if we want to go and charge her with a hate-related crime, the first thing that the prosecution will say to us, he said, you weren't even scared. Yeah, why do you want to call it a hate crime? He said, if you were scared, you would have called 911 right away, not 24 hours later, right? And that makes a lot of sense, right? So whether we want to do whatever, he said, the first thing we have to do is we have to engage the police right away and call 911. The second thing is, don't engage with that person, in the sense that don't argue with that person. The only thing that we should do, and again, this is not the responsibility of everybody here, right? We need to have certain people like the management, certain people like the volunteers here who will take the lead on this. But for example, if you're here and there's only 3 or 4 of you, the most thing that you should do is you should ask her to leave, for she's trespassing, right? And then call the police and wait for the police to come. Don't physically touch that person, because now you may be charged with assault. But only time you physically engage is when your own physical being is in danger. Means there's a danger that you may be attacked. That's when we are physically allowed to respond back. But otherwise, it says very important that we engage the police right away. You know, part of the discussion that we're having with the police department, and Canadian Muslim Vote is out here today as well, is that our community doesn't engage well with those who have been civically appointed to look after our needs, right? We don't call the police and rely on the police. We don't engage in the voting that takes place. We don't civically engage in different matters that affect us directly. And part of the process that we have to realize is that we need to engage civically within our society for our own betterment, because they are there to look after our affairs. And because Canadian Muslim Vote is here, they've asked me to again remind everybody the importance of civic engagement within our society. Now, whether that civic engagement is a relationship with the police, or it's a relationship with the elected officials who run the legislative affairs, or it's even to be part of the voting process to elect those who will look after our affairs. You know, it's something that's really important to understand. I think we are getting over that stigma that we shouldn't vote. I think we've kind of pushed past that that type of rhetoric, and I know it still exists within our community. But those like myself and others who encourage people to be part of the civic engagement within the society that we live in, we're not naive to the fact that this is not a perfect government. Yeah, we're not saying like, mashallah, Canada, no place like it. We're not saying that, right? In fact, we're saying there's no such thing like a perfect government anywhere in the world, right? And the only way there will be a perfect government is when there's a perfect human being running that government, right? And that will only come during the time of Sahib al-Zaman, Ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. However, in this society that we live in, we have that opportunity to where if we don't like something, we can mobilize and put pressure on those individuals who have been elected to change what they're thinking. Or if not, there's always that threat that if you don't, we will vote you out the next time. You know how powerful of a weapon that is, right? But we have to engage. We have to be part of that process to bring about this. And it's not just for us. I remember last year when we went to see Sayyid Sistani, he had mentioned this. Because one of the questions that was asked is, what can we in the West do to help you in the East? You remember I had addressed this. And he said, you need to civically engage. Because it may not make a difference today, it may not make a difference 5 years from now. But when we're part of that process and we're bringing about grassroots level participation and change, eventually the leaders who will come 20, 25 years from now will not be Islamophobic in nature. Yeah? They will not create policies that will harm us down there. He says there's nothing you can do for us immediately. But you can think long term and try to map out something that the policies then that are put into effect will help us down the line, inshallah, in the future. And that's the responsibility that we have. We have the responsibility to locally engage for our own local benefit, but as well for international reasons and causes. Inshallah, there will be a leadership when we participate and are heavily involved in it that will bring about changes to what is happening to our Muslim brothers and sisters here and abroad, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wan أن الحمد لله رب العالمين أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العلي العظيم